You have probably heard of the paleo diet. Eat like a caveman. Lots of meat. No grains, no sugar. The way nature intended. It sells cookbooks, supplements, whole restaurants. There is just one problem. It is mostly a myth. What our ancestors actually ate, on an ordinary day, looks almost nothing like what's sold to you under their name. It was stranger, humbler, far more varied, and in some ways far healthier than the meat-heavy fantasy on the label. So, forget the marketing for a moment and come with me through a single real day in the life of an ancient human, morning to night, one meal at a time. Because the true story of what they ate tells you something surprising, not just about them, but about the body you are living in right now. The day begins and the first surprise is this: there is no breakfast. There is no cupboard, no stored meal waiting. When our ancestors woke by the embers of last night's fire, hungry, the food for the day did not yet exist. It was still out there, in the ground, on the branch, hidden in the grass. The day did not start with eating. It started with the work of finding food. And here is the second surprise, the one that overturns the whole caveman myth. That work was not, mostly, about hunting big animals. The reliable, everyday calories, the food you could count on, day after day, came overwhelmingly from gathering, from plants. And in most groups we've studied, that steady, dependable food was brought in largely by the women, working together, often with children alongside. The hunters might come back with nothing for days, but the gatherers almost always came back with something. So the true foundation of the human diet was not the dramatic kill. It was the patient, daily harvest of the land, the quiet, unglamorous food that actually kept everyone alive. So picture the morning not as a hunt, but as a spreading out. Small groups heading into the landscape with digging sticks and woven bags, and a deep, inherited knowledge of exactly what was ripe, where, and when. So what was actually in those bags? Far more than you'd think. Roots and tubers, dug from the earth. The starchy, filling foods hidden underground, safe from most other animals, waiting for anyone who knew where to dig. These were the daily bread of the ancient world, not glamorous, but dependable, and full of the energy a body runs on. Then the sweeter finds, wild berries in their brief seasons, nuts and seeds, rich and full of fat and protein, tender greens and leaves, wild fruits, small and sharp, nothing like the huge sweet ones we've bred today. And the single most prized food of all, the one people would climb and dig and brave stings to reach, was honey. Pure, concentrated energy, sweeter than almost anything else in the ancient world. To find a wild hive was to strike gold. Add to that the small, easy protein most people forget. Insects, grubs, eggs from a ground nest, shellfish along a shore, the occasional small animal caught by hand. Not every meal was a hunt. Much of it was simply picking up whatever the day offered. Put it together, and the everyday ancient diet was astonishingly diverse. Dozens, even hundreds of different wild foods across a year. Not one superfood, not one perfect meal. A shifting, colorful mix of whatever the land was giving right then. That variety, spread across the seasons, may be one of the healthiest things about how they ate. So where does the meat come in? The part the caveman myth is obsessed with. It comes in But not the way you've been told. Meat was real, and it mattered, and it was deeply prized. But for most groups, most of the time, it was not an everyday food. It was an event. Think about what a hunt actually was. Hard, dangerous, and uncertain. You could track an animal for hours under a brutal sun and come home with nothing. You could go days, even weeks, without a big kill. Meat was not the reliable base of the diet. It was the jackpot, hitting every so often, never on schedule. And when it did come, nothing was wasted. Not the muscle, not the fat, not the organs, the liver, the brain, all rich in the exact nutrients a body craves. And above all, the marrow. Our ancestors would crack open the long bones to reach the fatty marrow inside, a dense, precious source of energy that other predators often couldn't get to. Some scientists think this was one of our earliest tricks, not bringing down giants, but reaching the rich food hidden in the bones the big hunters left behind. So when meat arrived, it was a feast, shared out across the whole group, a burst of energy and celebration. But the day in, day out eating, the food that carried them through the long stretches between kills, was still the humble harvest from the ground and the branch. Now the day turns, the light softens, the foragers and hunters return, and everything gathered comes together in one place, the fire. This is where the day's food became a meal. Roots and tubers buried in the hot ash to soften. Meat, if there was any, roasting over the flames. The gathered berries and nuts shared around. And here is something the caveman myth almost always forgets. Almost none of it was eaten raw. Fire was at the center of the human meal. Cooking made the tough roots soft, the risky meat safe, and pulled far more energy out of every bite than raw food ever could. And the evening meal was not a private thing. It was shared. What one person found, everyone ate. The lucky hunter's kill fed the family whose gathering had come up short that day, and tomorrow it might be the other way around. This constant sharing was not just kindness, it was survival strategy. In a world where any single person's luck could fail, pooling the food meant no one starved on an unlucky day. The shared evening meal, around the fire, was the safety net that held the whole group together. So a full day of ancient eating looked less like 3 fixed meals and more like this, nibbling on gathered food through the day as you found it, and then one real, warm, communal meal at night, cooked on the fire, shared among everyone, different from one day to the next. But here is the thing that breaks the whole idea of a fixed, ancient diet. There was no single menu, because the food changed completely with the seasons. Our ancestors did not eat the same things all year. They ate whatever the year was giving. In the rich seasons, when the fruit ripened, when the herds were fat, when the hives were full, there was plenty, and bodies filled out, storing energy for what was coming. It was a time of abundance and of feasting. And then came the lean times, the dry season, the deep of winter. When the plants died back, the animals grew thin and scattered, and the land gave up much less. In those months, our ancestors ate less, worked harder for every mouthful, and leaned on the foods that lasted, and on the memory of the elders who knew where the last hidden resources could be found. This rhythm, feast and famine, plenty and scarcity, swinging back and forth across the year, was the true shape of ancient eating. Not a steady, controlled diet, but a body riding the seasons, filling up when it could and enduring when it couldn't. And that rhythm is still written inside you. Your body's talent for storing fat in times of plenty, so frustrating in a modern world of endless food, was once a life-saving gift, built for a world where the feast was always followed, sooner or later, by the famine. You are carrying a stomach designed for a year that swung between too much and not enough. So let's come back to that paleo diet and see it clearly now. The popular version, heavy on meat, obsessed with what to cut out, gets the real story almost backwards. The everyday ancient diet was not built on slabs of meat. It was built on plants, gathered daily, with meat as an occasional prize. It was not one fixed set of approved foods. It was wildly varied, and it changed with every season and every region. An ancestor by the sea ate shellfish and seaweed. One in the forest ate nuts and game. One on the plains ate tubers and honey, and the occasional great kill. There was never a single caveman diet. There were hundreds, each shaped by a particular corner of the earth. But there are real lessons in the true story, and they're worth more than any fad. Our ancestors ate an enormous variety of whole, unprocessed foods. They ate a lot of plants and a lot of fiber. They ate almost nothing that was sweet and concentrated. A little honey in a good season, and that was it. And they were physically active for nearly everything they ate: walking, digging, climbing, carrying. The real paleo lesson was never eat more meat. It was variety, whole foods, movement, and a deep respect for a body built to ride the seasons. That's the truth the marketing left out, and it's far more useful than the myth. So the next time you open a full fridge, or pass a shelf stacked with food that never runs out, take a moment to feel how strange that would seem to your ancestors. For them, food was not a given. It was found and dug and chased and shared. A different mix every day, every season, every year. They ate the whole living world around them, whatever it offered, and they survived on knowledge, patience, and the fire that turned a scattered harvest into a shared meal in the dark. You didn't inherit a diet. You inherited a body shaped by that endless, shifting search for food, and it is still with you at every meal. This is the story of how we fed ourselves through the ages, and there is so much more of it to tell. Sit down at the oldest campfire on Earth and follow along. This is Emberkind.